Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Other Side of Sales. I'm Ashleigh Early.
And I'm Kasey Jones.
And we are today joined by Kris Holmes. They are the founder of Reframing Joy, an opportunity creator of Proof Point Marketing, and an all-around awkward protege of Mr. Rogers. And I have to say, that is a fantastic intro, Kris, especially because I know Kasey also shares a strong affinity for Mr. Rogers. And I just want to thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So I want to start off you've got an incredible journey that you've been on, especially the past few years in sales and in life. And I want, for those of our viewers who are not familiar with your journey, why don't you tell them a little bit about kind of what's been going on?
As far as career life transitions go, going through a divorce kind of puts you in a different life bracket to choose something. So I was left as a single parent with two small children. I had inevitably lost my community, my home, and all of the things associated with that. Fell into construction. So I worked a construction job part-time, doing some demolition on a building, and met some connections and fell into sales through that. So that particular person over the project kind of put me in touch with my first sales role, in the form of, hey, they have no women that work there. You should go and apply for that job. Luckily for me, it worked in my favor. I've been in sales now for a little over 5 years, and definitely grown a lot, learned a lot. Worked for a really niche SaaS company. And then, was going through a lot of different things, just personally developing as well. I think personal development and sales development go hand in hand. So as I developed personally and got more comfortable with myself, I actually became a better sales rep and just more comfortable with that craft. And then switched over to Proof Point probably about 8 weeks ago, just to get a little bit more personal alignment in my work, identity, and culture. So
I love this story. It's fascinating to me how women and non-binary folk, it is so ridiculously common that the story is like, oh, I was doing something else and someone was like, hey, you should try sales. And then we migrate into that and wind up being really damn good at it. And I think this is one of the reasons why Ashleigh and I are so passionate about having these conversations, right? Is that imagine if we had thought just a little earlier in our careers that this was an option for us, or something that we could do, or something that we might actually really enjoy and be good at. But I would say someday we'll have to go back through all of the episodes and count. But I would say the majority of non-dudes, well, okay, I call everybody dude, non-men, that we've talked to, that's the story of them doing something else and someone kind of spotting this potential. And so I'm really curious, when this person was like, oh, hey, you should try this, what was your first reaction? Were you like, you're crazy? This sounds interesting. What did you think when this person was like, oh, hey, yeah, no, you should give sales a try?
Yeah, I think maybe potentially many would fall into this category of ew, me? I'm not a salesperson. What? And you think of maybe a used car salesman, really, sleazy, slimy type, yeah. Sorry to all the used car salesmen out there. So didn't really think it was a fit for me. However, I wanted to not live with my parents forever. with my kids, with my kids and do all that. So it definitely gave me an opportunity to own my career and make money, for lack of a better word, right? To provide for myself and my family. So
yeah. And it's funny. You just reminded me that that's the other theme, is single parents I think are some of the best salespeople out there. It's one, you've got a drive that some 24-year-old who doesn't really have any expenses or things like that. But also I think there's something of like this combination of, drive, but lack of ego, right? Because there's something more important. And also if there's someone who knows how to just dive right in and learn how to do things that they don't know how to do, it's a parent, because I am not a parent, but I assume that's what parenting is kind of like.
Yeah.
You've got to kind of dive right in and do something that you don't really know how to do. But so I am interested, like, as you've gone down this path and evolved in your career, how does being a parent affect how you think about your work and your career?
I'd probably have to bring it back to development. I'm big on growth and awareness and every day competing against your former self and to try to be better. That goes hand in hand with sales, with parenting, because kids are terrible monsters and they just do whatever they want. Parenting is a lot like drowning, and then someone hands you an infant and they're like, figure it out. So and so I mean, for me, I had to learn pretty quick. Like I had to learn who I am outside of 10 years in what I would call a toxic relationship.
Yeah.
And I have 2 little human beings that need me, and whatever, insert next thing. So definitely go back to, as I developed my parenting skills, as I learned how to be more confident in who I was there, I can bring that confidence into the sales floor and that experience. And it really helps you own the process a little bit more. Like if you're not confident in yourself or the product that you're selling or whatever it is that you're doing, the person on the other line can sense that.
Yeah.
So you talk about confidence and owning yourself and how that can impact your sales career. And I got to say your explanation of someone handing you an infant and you're drowning and saying, figure it out. I feel like there's a lot of salespeople who feel like that reminds them of their first sales job. Granted, it's not a thing that literally requires your attention 24/7. It only requires it 8 hours a day, but it's like, here's a phone, go hit your number or you lose your job in 60 days. That feeling of drowning is something I think too many salespeople have experienced because of bad onboarding. But at that same time, coming through it, and then it's like, okay, I can handle this. I can figure it out. I'd love to hear a little bit about kind of your journey with your identity and owning your full self and being free to bring your full self to work around specifically pronouns, because you use they, them, which is becoming more common as people become more comfortable bringing their full selves to work, which is exciting. But it's something that a lot of people probably haven't experienced. So I'm curious what that's been like. Maybe not necessarily coming out as non-binary, but introducing yourself in the sales environment. Has it been open? Has it been what have some of the reactions been like? And what has that done to you personally?
I'll have to start. My journey was actually just coming out at work. Not that you need to do that thing, but for some reason I felt like I did. So like I made an appointment with my manager on his calendar to like go into his office and do the thing.
Wow.
And I remember walking in and, you know, he's like, why do you want to meet with me? And I said, I just need to tell you something. It's personal. It doesn't necessarily involve work, but I feel like I should tell you that I'm queer. Like, you know, and their response was, okay, does this affect your job? Are you going to not hate your numbers now? because of this?
I really hope they were being sarcastic.
And then I said, I don't think so, because I was this way yesterday. I just didn't tell you about it. So I think we're good. So they're like, okay. And that was it. And then for me, just throughout the journey, I've just been more comfortable with with developing who I am and how I want to present myself. Moving away from like a heterosexual relationship with, you know, and looking a certain way and feeling a certain way, but not necessarily being comfortable. It was kind of like a progression. So, you know, I got to cut my hair how I wanted, you know, pick out clothes however I wanted to pick out clothes. And my first girlfriend actually introduced me to non-traditional pronouns. So they use Zer. I can't say that one for some reason, but Zer. And I was like, oh, you can pick, you can have pronouns that like help you feel comfortable and, you know, the skin and the body that you're born in. I was like, that's awesome. I really kind of started exploring what fit for me with a small, you know, circle of friends, really close friends that were very supportive and kind of explored that avenue with me. Landed on they, them, would identify as like non-binary, not, you know, really fitting into either, you know, male, female, you know, traditional norms. Yeah, and then just finding ways to use that in the workplace. I started off with Zoom. I just changed my Zoom, so just like nonchalantly pop up every time I was in the meeting. It says, you know, my name, they, them, so that people could get used to it. And then if I were, you know, misgendered in what I would assume is a safe working relationship, I would, you know, come out to that person and just be like, hey, these are actually my correct pronouns. I would appreciate it if you could, you know, try to work on that with me.
So, okay. So thank you for sharing a little bit more of your journey. Cause I'm always very curious, like, is it something that you have an aha and you're like changing everything, or is it like an actual journey? Right. And I think about that a lot. And so it is always really helpful to, I think, for, you know, the cisgendered among us to like hear those stories so we can, I don't know,
better understand and support.
Well, and virtually sort of walk a mile in your shoes, right? Like understand what that must have been like. But I'm really curious, like, what are some of the unexpected ways that people have shown their support or been an ally? Like things where you're like, wow, I wouldn't have thought that would have made such a big difference, but it totally did. Because I think that's also really helpful for the rest of us to know, like, what are the really subtle little things that we can do to better support the non-binary folks around us?
Yeah, absolutely. Part of it is practice, you know, practicing and owning if you mess up, like being okay. Cause like even a lot of folks that are or identify in like a non-binary, non-traditional, you know, type of way will even mess up or misgender themselves in some ways because it's kind of ingrained in all of us. Like, yeah. Are you a boy or girl? Are you boy or girl? You know, be in one of these buckets, or I can't understand it and it's not acceptable. So one is just kind of giving yourself grace and, you know, leaning into awkward or hard conversations with people, like help me understand this a little bit better, or help me understand how I can, you know, best support you in the workplace, or how I can, better utilize, particular pronouns, and that type of thing. So I think it just really is however you approach an allyship in some way with someone that you care about. So think about, all these people as someone that you care about, and you care about making sure that they feel whole and loved and, appreciated for who they are.
Yeah, I think that that's a very powerful message. And I think especially, you talking about owning when you get it wrong, because I think that's the big thing, is like allowing us all to have grace of like, we're all going to screw it up and it's okay. And it's when we struggle to like own that and admit it, that I think that's when it becomes the problem.
I mean, just like you're going to have an off month in sales. I mean, everything can go back to something, right? You're going to have an off moment in parenting. Like there's some times when I really mess up, and I should be able to come to my kids and be like, hey, I'm sorry. That wasn't appropriate, or I did the wrong thing there. I made the wrong choice. And, how does that make you feel? And what, have some ownership in that process creates trust.
Yeah.
It's interesting you bring up trust. And a minute ago, when you're talking about kind of your journey, you mentioned if you feel like you're in a safe working relationship, you'll correct if somebody gets the pronouns wrong. How do you know when it's safe? How do you know when you can trust somebody?
Mm-hmm. I'm an empath, so I have I feel all the things all the time, but I guess I just kind of rely heavily on intuition and in my gut. Like, does this feel like this person can walk this next step with me? Can we do this thing? And that really goes to anything with pronouns, with leveraging opportunities to get promoted or get a raise, right? You have to have a trust relationship with the next person, the next step in the process. So yeah, big gut person. There's no facts there.
Well, I think the fact there is listen to your gut.
Yeah.
Which can be tricky to do sometimes. But
so I'm really curious, you're a founder of Reframing Joy, excuse me. What does that mean for you?
Yeah, for me, that was really started from my own journey of learning like who I am, what I'm good at, what I like, taking that into parenting, into my sales process and just my career journey in general. And then wanting to help people along, because I think a lot of times people are either taught or conditioned to not trust themselves.
Yeah.
Especially as children, when you grow up, there's a fine line between like, I don't want my kids to be assholes. Like, don't raise an asshole. That's kind of like my go-to, right? But
it's a solid one to work on.
Who they are as people, though, they have their, my daughter told me the other day, one thing that parents could learn is that kids have a mind of their own. Like, they're human. They're a human being. And so, that fine line between like parenting them and guiding them.
Yeah.
But also allowing them to be themselves, to be confident in who they are, to trust their gut, to do that thing. And not, say phrases like, because I said so, or, kids should be seen and not heard, whatever it is. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's what it makes me think about is also what I think you've talked about a little bit in the workplace of like bringing your whole self to work. And it's kind of the same thing of how you're approaching parenting, which I think is very powerful. And so I am curious, like, for people that struggle to find that, have the confidence to show up fully as themselves, do you have any advice on how you navigate some of that?
I mean, I waited a long time to do that for myself. And I would like to see people do that sooner, rather than later. And it's twofold for me. I want parents to be better so that their kids are just raised being confident in who they are from day one. So they don't have to kind of like unbecome what their parents told them they needed to be. Yep. And then, you know, in environments where adults are gathered, you know, workplace environments and other things, is we could go back to like, don't be an asshole. You know, like treat people like a human being. It doesn't matter if you understand it or not. You know, my dad's super country. He's like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't understand. And I said, well, you know what? You don't have to understand something to respect someone. There's a totally different situation here. So like no one's asking you to like, you know, come to a rally. What they're asking you to do is meet them as a human being. Like that's another human being that you want to be respected. So does everyone else. So just kind of like come to the table to have a conversation.
You hit on something earlier that I think ties into that really well, which is you said, you mentioned your first girlfriend introduced you to the world of alternative pronouns, and that this idea that, hey, you can change the pronouns to help you feel more comfortable with yourself. I've never heard it described in that way before. And that really struck me. And as somebody who's thankfully has never I felt uncomfortable in my own skin, but not in that specific way. The idea that language can do that is incredibly powerful. And I would hope that sales leaders who are listening or allies who are listening realize that this is a little thing that can be done to help someone feel seen and validated and comfortable in their own skin. You don't have, like, you said that really well there. It's not about agreeing. It's about respect and trying to treat some other person with compassion and empathy, which is not hard and doesn't cost anything.
Right.
So it seems like such a little thing, and it's a little thing, but it's a lot of times little things are hard things. I mean, like even in the intake to this, I think I accidentally misgendered you 2 or 3 times and I didn't even notice it. I was really trying to be good. I still screwed it up. But that brings up kind of this other issue of what to do when things go wrong and you're not in a safe place. Mm-hmm. And especially in sales where there's kind of double the level of exposure. You've got the internal exposure from your team. You've got the external exposure from clients. How do you manage that stress, that confrontation, or anything like that? And what's that been like?
So I don't want to name names or anything, but the company I was working at prior to, we worked with churches and ministries. So if you can imagine, some of them are, you know, kind of all across the board as far as what they might believe or hold value in. Mm-hmm. And then you have me jumping on a Zoom call. Well, so for me, I had to find somebody that had my back. Yeah. That could be there if something didn't work quite right or go well. So that was step number 1. And then for me, it became a point where just like the job in general, it didn't matter how many allies I had at my company, that external factor was no longer safe for me to be a part of and to be able to be okay with that. Like, this is not the place for me. It doesn't have to be bad. And so thankfully for me, I had that trust built with a few different people that I got to leverage them in helping me get to another company. So like I had internal support in moving to the company I'm at now. and it all starts with just like those little things where those micro moments where you can be, genuine and authentic, and you can ask that person to continue to show up for you. And you just build that trust over and over again, because, getting to a place where you can be yourself fully, internally within the organization and, externally with clients, saying, if that person doesn't treat you well, we don't need their business. And that's where I work now. So, all right, cool. Moving on to the next one. And it's nice to be here in that environment.
I bet that feels really good. But I'm also curious. I think that's such an important lesson. And I think we talk about this a ton of how do you build a network of people that support you and have your back. And I think it's amazing. I think a lot about how I wish that earlier in my career, I had built more of a network outside of the companies that I worked for. But I guess I didn't always think about the ways that you can build a powerful network within your company, like strong enough that they would support your journey elsewhere. And so I'm curious, when you look back at that, is there anything that you feel like you did really well, or I don't know, some steps that you took that others can learn from, of how you built such powerful relationships?
Yeah. So, it comes down to those micro moments where you can build trust. And it gives you a really good indicator of, okay, how far can this go?
Yeah.
And then I always take it offline before it gets anywhere, you have to protect yourself too. Right. So don't be doing this in your work chats and things like that could potentially be monitored by people that aren't in your trust net, right? In that safety space with you. And you kind of build it and you work together. So a lot of those people are actually, we kind of all leveraged opportunities to go elsewhere, for different reasons. So part of it was luck for me, and part of it, was just trusting my gut, just building the right relationships with the right people. And then fortunately for me, the company I'm at right now, they kind of understand that, like, hey, we want you to be here for as long as you want to be here, but we also know that you might be somewhere else 2, 3, 4, whatever years down the road. And so we want to help you be better at your job here and learn the skills that you want to grow in for the next role and next opportunity too. So I think find companies like that, leverage LinkedIn, build a community.
It's not a myth. Awesome. They do exist.
Yeah, they do.
So Kris, this has been amazing. And I can't thank you enough for bringing your full self to this and sharing the journey, and just a ton of honesty here. Kind of as we wrap up, we're going to end this the same way we end all of our episodes and others on the other side of sales, with the lightning round. So this is a series of rapid fire questions designed to be a little bit fun, some a little serious, but mostly a lot of fun, just to kind of end things on a high note. And we'll start with our first question. What's your morning routine?
Yeah, so most mornings I get up probably between like 5:30 and 6 and spend some time journaling or coloring. I'm like super addicted to adult coloring. So I just sit by myself. Sometimes I watch the news, not very much, because it's like I said, I'm an empath, right? So it's like very hard to watch. If I do, I'll listen to it. Pull up a podcast, do something like that, and then attempt to work out. So that's like my thing of the last year. It's like, I don't know what you do without gyms. So what am I supposed to do here by myself? So yeah, that's probably it. Get some coffee.
It's awesome. So pick one person who's had a significant impact on your career.
I can't say Mr. Rogers, because I don't know if he had an impact on my career, but super cool. I had some really great people in my life that reminded me of who I am and what I'm capable of when I forgot.
That's awesome.
Carl Ferreira, apologize for him messing up his last name. It's too hard to pronounce. He's with HubSpot now, but he was my coworker. Love him. And he's always been in my corner. So really appreciate him a lot.
What's your pump up song?
So it changes, but I like they're probably like a guilty pleasure or something. It's going to be like Britney Spears or some sort of like, I don't know, FU ballad or something. Like I like right now My Way by Ava Max.
Oh,
You've heard that one?
yeah.
It's pretty good.
I also have to ask, do I hear a kitten? Oh goodness. Those of you who aren't watching video are missing out. It is an adorable little black kitten. And I have the biggest soft spot in my heart for black cats because they are the sweetest things.
This is what the dog is barking at.
Fair enough.
Come here, chew toy.
What's one thing you wish you'd learned earlier?
That everything you need is already inside you. Like you've got it. Right. You might need someone to like help show you it. You might need a therapist. You might need a mentor. You might need all of these things. Right. But you're capable of, living the life that you want, being comfortable in your own skin, owning your career, all of that type of thing.
What book has been most helpful to you in your sales career?
I'm gonna have to go with like a classic, The Challenger Sale. For me, it just kind of, showed the journey of like the different types, and it doesn't matter. It's like, it's not a bad thing if you're like one or, multiple types of a sales person. And then everybody can adopt, characteristics to just kind of hone in on the process and just be a little bit more of a thought leader for your potential prospect, and help them. And it's ways that you position questions. So that book was really important.
What's one way someone could have been a better ally to you?
I mean, there's probably many ways. There's probably many ways I could have done that better for other people too. I mean, I would say just kind of pause and go back to the human thing, right? This is another human, whether you like whatever it is that you ascribe to or believe. It's not threatening to respect another human being. Like it doesn't threaten or disregard the thing that you hold as truth for you.
I think you might have guessed what the next question is going to be. What's one way you're working to be a better ally for others?
Yeah. So I would just be, learning too. I want to learn about, how to better show up for LGBTQ plus individuals that are, in the workforce or coming in the workforce. I want to, learn how to better show up for Black and brown folks that are also experiencing different things, and to do that in a way that's healthy for everyone, right? So educate yourself, do that self-work that needs to be done, so that you can be, more able to show up for other people, right? Don't go to the people that are having the issues or the problems. Do the work yourself to try to learn.
Yeah, I think that's a very powerful lesson. Okay, last but not least. Okay, maybe it's least, but last. What is your guilty pleasure after a bad day?
Ice cream, hands down. My kids, single parent life, right? My kids know that mom had a bad day when we have popcorn and ice cream for dinner. And they're like, yes, mom had a terrible day. Yeah.
I love that. Kris, thank you so much again for coming on. How can people find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on all of the socials. Reframing Joy is everywhere. So TikTok, Twitter, all that. And then LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. So,
and all those links will be in the show notes. So it has been such a joy having you on today. Really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And thank you, listeners, for listening in. Please do connect with Kris. All the links are in the show notes. And please don't forget to like, subscribe, and review if you're feeling especially nice today. Reviews make a big difference in terms of improving visibility of this podcast and the other stuff we're doing. Also, don't forget to check out the new revitalized blog on othersideofsales.com and hit us up on all of our socials as well. And with that, thank you for listening to another episode, and we will see you next week.